Good day and welcome back. If you are trying to understand what Washington really means when it talks about tax cuts, deficits, and who actually benefits, this exchange from the Scott Bessent hearing is one you need to pay close attention to. Before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you do not miss these breakdowns, because this is where policy gets translated into real-life consequences.
I look forward to working with you and Ranking Member Wyden to ensure our tax code supports working families, to protect Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and to promote trade policies that work for Georgia businesses and that boost our economy. Mr. Bessent, good morning and good to see you again. I enjoyed our conversation earlier this week, and in that conversation you outlined ambitious goals for the federal government and deficit reduction. I'd like to follow up on our discussion about your economic plan. According to a new report from the Tax Policy Center, the largest tax cuts from extending the Trump tax bill would go to those with the highest income, especially those in the top 1%, making more than $1 million per year. In fact, the top 1% of owners will take home roughly 1/4 of the benefits of the law, and the top 5% will get almost half of that. Do you believe that the wealthiest 1% of Americans deserve or need an additional tax cut?
Senator Warnock, I greatly enjoyed visiting with you. I think probably a better way to look at it is on a percentage basis. And when I think about the distributional aspects of the Tax Cuts and Job Act, that most of the benefits accrued for the working and middle people as opposed to the upper ends. In absolute dollars, as you just read, that is correct, but I think it's important to look at it in percentage terms.
So you believe that the tax cut that provided 1/4 of the benefits of the law to the top 1% and top 5% getting almost 1/2 actually benefited those at the bottom more than it did those at the top. Is that your testimony?
I believe that in 2018, 2019, that the households in the bottom 50% of income earners, the wealth increase for those households was three times higher than the wealth increase for the top 10% of Americans.
So we should continue to move in that direction and give more tax cuts to those at the highest. You have talked about high deficits as a national defense problem, and I agree with that. I think we need to be fiscally responsible. We need to work to close the deficit and bring the national debt under control. In 2013, Congress extended the Bush tax cuts for everyone except those making more than $400,000 a year. This bipartisan decision saved the Treasury $600 billion, helping to narrow the deficit. Do you agree that ending the tax cuts for those making more than $400,000 would help close the deficit and reduce our national debt?
Senator Warnock, I do not. I believe that you would capture an inordinate amount of small business people who largely are in that cohort of 400,000 to a million.
So you wouldn't cut it off at 400,000. What about $1 million?
That again, I believe these are small business pass-through owners, and I believe that we, as I said before, Wall Street's done great. It is time for Main Street to do well, and small businesses need to drive what I call the reprivatization here away from this government spending.
I agree that it's Main Street's time. I'm from Atlanta, so I'll say Peachtree and some other locations in my state. What about those making more than 10 million? Would we reduce the deficit by extending those tax cuts for folks making about $10 million?
So again, I think it's important that we put in incentives for them to invest. So going back to the 100% depreciation for equipment, that I think that.
So, and I don't mean to keep interrupting, but I'm the pastor, and and we're known to be loquacious of speech, but I'm running out of time here. What about $1 billion?
So again, I think that these are the job creators.
So there's no income level for which you would support raising taxes. Is that fair?
There is no income level that I don't think we should continue the TCJA as it was.
All right. I think our country is facing structural deficits. However, I think that to continue to reduce taxes for the wealthy and letting them avoid taxes based on what they already owe is not going to get us out of that problem. But I look forward to continuing that discussion with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. And before we go on to Senator Blackburn, I just want to restate there's a lot of facts that have been thrown around in this.
Today's hearing focused on the future of the Trump-era tax cuts and whether extending them would help working families or primarily benefit the wealthiest Americans. Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia pressed Scott Bessent on new findings from the Tax Policy Center, which show that if these tax cuts are extended, the top 1% of earners, those making more than $1 million a year, would receive roughly 1/4 of all the benefits. Expand that to the top 5%, and nearly half of the total tax relief goes to the very top. That is not a talking point. That is math. Warnock's core question was simple and powerful. Do the wealthiest Americans really need another tax cut, especially at a time of massive deficits and mounting national debt? If you are finding this helpful so far, take a second to subscribe, because this is exactly how these debates shape your paycheck, your healthcare, and your future. Bessent's response followed a familiar argument we often hear in Washington. He did not deny that the richest Americans received the largest dollar benefits. Instead, he reframed the issue, arguing that the real measure should be percentage gains rather than total dollars. In his view, households in the bottom half of income earners saw larger relative gains after the 2017 tax law than those at the top. This is where context matters. A percentage increase can look impressive while still translating into far less real money. A small percentage boost on $1 million income is vastly different from a larger percentage boost on a modest wage. That distinction often gets lost in political debates, but it is critical for understanding who actually feels the impact. Warnock then shifted the conversation to fiscal responsibility. He pointed out that high deficits are not just an accounting issue, they are a national security concern. He reminded the committee that in 2013, Congress made a bipartisan decision to let Bush-era tax cuts expire for those making over $400,000 a year. That move saved the Treasury roughly $600 billion and helped reduce the deficit. This is an important historical reminder. Congress has raised taxes on the wealthy before, and the economy did not collapse. Bessent rejected the idea outright. He argued that raising taxes at that level would hurt small business owners, many of whom file taxes as pass-through entities and report high personal income, even though their businesses may operate on thin margins. According to Bessent, these individuals are the engine of Main Street, not Wall Street, and raising their taxes would slow investment and job creation. If this kind of policy breakdown matters to you, go ahead and subscribe now, because this is the type of nuance that rarely makes it into short clips or headlines. Warnock kept pushing, escalating the question. What about people making $1 million? What about $10 million? What about $1 billion? At each step, Bessent held firm. There was no income level at which he was willing to support higher taxes. In his view, even at the highest levels of wealth, these earners should be incentivized, not taxed more, because they are seen as job creators whose investments drive economic growth. This moment revealed the real philosophical divide. One side sees targeted tax increases on the ultra-wealthy as a practical tool to reduce deficits and protect programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. The other side believes that any tax increase on high earners risks slowing economic growth and shifting investment away from the private sector. And here's what viewers should take away. This debate is not just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It is about competing visions of how the economy works and who it should work for. When lawmakers argue about tax cuts, they are really arguing about priorities, who shoulders the burden, and who gets protected when money is tight. If you want more clear, honest explanations like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We will continue breaking down these hearings so you can understand not just what was said, but what it actually means for you and your family.